Thank you all for being here. I hope you enjoy today's video, and if you'd like to support the channel, please hit that subscribe button. It's free and makes a huge difference for me. Ringo Starr didn't stroll into the Beatles like a long-lost brother. He walked in as the replacement people assumed wouldn't last, grinning under hot lights while reporters called him the luckiest drummer alive, and insiders muttered he didn't deserve the spot. At least one bandmate treated him like he'd been hired for the day, and an ambitious outsider would later twist that brotherhood into something cold and legal. After years of keeping the peace, Ringo finally put words to the names and moments he couldn't forgive, and the story is sharper than most fans expect. The sting didn't begin on Abbey Road. It started in a hospital ward in wartime Liverpool. Young Richard Starkey spent long stretches battling peritonitis and then tuberculosis, missing school, falling behind, and learning early what it feels like to be outside the circle. He emerged shy and quiet, carrying the sense that other people knew the rules of life better than he did. Drums became refuge, steady work with Rory Storm and the Hurricanes, not flashy, but rock solid, the kind of feel other musicians trust without asking. So when the Beatles decided in 1962 they needed a stronger drummer than Pete Best, they called Ringo. He walked into EMI as the upgrade and immediately got a reality check. At the Love Me Do session, producer George Martin didn't trust the newcomer and brought in session ace Andy White. Ringo shook a tambourine and swallowed the humiliation. Years later, he admitted the bruise never faded. "I went through hell because George Martin had this session drummer. I made him apologize every day. He joined as the savior and was quietly replaced on the single. Headlines piled on, branding him the least talented Beatle, as if he were lucky to stand behind Lennon and McCartney. Inside, the hierarchy was obvious. John and Paul wrote the songs. George Harrison fought for space. Ringo kept the pocket, sang a charming tune here and there, told a joke, and was expected to stay grateful. Then Brian Epstein died in 1967, and the adult in the room was gone. That's when the most genial Beatle found himself squeezed between three intense personalities, and one of them pushed him to the breaking point. Paul McCartney's perfectionism could be thrilling in the finished grooves and smothering in the room. After Epstein's death, Paul became the de facto foreman, calling meetings, driving sessions, insisting on takes until the air turned thin. "Paul always made the phone call," Ringo said. "He wanted us to work all the time. Admirable on paper, claustrophobic in practice." During the White Album sessions, McCartney zeroed in on drum details, asking for retake after retake until the calmest man in the building finally snapped. When Paul sat at the kit to show the part, Ringo heard the old wound reopen. First Love Me Do, now this. Optional, replaceable. He packed his sticks, walked out, and vanished for almost 2 weeks. The Beatles tracked without their heartbeat. Decades later, the two men would become the last durable bridge to the old band. In 2015, Paul stood at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and inducted Ringo as a solo artist, joking, hugging, acknowledging a bond that somehow outlived the fights. The hurt was real, and so was the mending. Then there was John and Yoko. For years, Ringo had admired Lennon, setting a calm backbeat behind John's chaos. In 1968, the chemistry shifted. Yoko Ono didn't just arrive beside John. She arrived inside the creative process. The Beatles had always been a tight circle of 4. Suddenly there were 5 in the room, and one voice John prioritized above everyone else's. Yoko offered thoughts on rhythm and tone. John backed her immediately. To Ringo, already branded the least talented, It felt like being told where his voice ended and hers began. George Harrison bristled. John slammed back, accusing the others of disrespect. The band wasn't arguing about music anymore, it was arguing about loyalty. Ringo, who lived to keep the temperature down, felt the leader slipping away into a relationship that left no space for anyone else. In 1980, he visited John in New York. They laughed. It felt like brothers again. Weeks later, Lennon was gone, and the questions that might have been faced together dissolved into grief. The outsider came dressed as a savior. With Epstein gone, Apple Corps bleeding cash, and the four Beatles drowning in their own success, Alan Klein looked like a lifeline, tough, blunt, ready to fight for them. Ringo, exhausted by smooth talkers who fixed nothing, felt relief. For a moment, Klein seemed like the defender they needed. Then the pitch shifted. Klein didn't come to broker harmony. He came to gather power. He read each Beatle fast. John's restlessness, Paul's need for control, George's frustration, Ringo's hunger for peace. He tuned them like instruments to play his song. The split crystallized when Paul refused to sign with Klein. Suddenly, it was 3 against 1. Klein rode that math hard, stoking meetings without Paul, pushing decisions that deepened the crack. Ringo tried to keep the room civil. He didn't want sides, but the air kept darkening until even he had to admit it. They weren't arguing with each other anymore. They were being steered. In 1970, Paul sued the other 3, the company and Klein. Friendship gave way to filings. The greatest band in the world ended not with a spectacular final chord, but with signatures. Worse, the man Ringo had trusted proved in time to be the deepest cut. By 1973, it was clear Klein had mismanaged money and bent contracts. He was fired, and investigations followed. The 3 who had once defended him, Ringo among them, admitted they'd been wrong. A colleague recalled George saying, "The only way the Beatles can ever get together again is if Alan isn't there. I'm ready, so is Ring." That line says everything about how far the wound went. For Ringo, Klein wasn't just a bad hire. He was the person who made reunion impossible, a cold architect of a breakup no song could fix. Which leaves the question that shadowed Ringo from day one. Was he really the weak link? For years, the jokes wrote themselves. Then time did what time does. It exposed what the studio always knew. George Martin, the same producer who once swapped him out on Love Me Do, later praised him as the human click track, the anchor who almost never drifted. Younger drummers studied his feel and learned they couldn't fake it. It wasn't chops for chops' sake. It was deep musicality, taste, and pocket. He left air where air belonged and lifted songs without pulling focus. After the breakup, the narrative flipped on the strength of the work. Ringo cut real solo hits. Legends kept calling. Harrison, Clapton, Dylan, Elton, not for nostalgia, but because his groove made their music breathe. He became the glue guy every band dreams of. Reliable, musical, egoless, instantly identifiable. Even Paul, the man who once took his seat, ended up celebrating him in public, acknowledging what fans and players had figured out. The Beatles' engine didn't run without that backbeat. So who sits on Ringo's private list of unforgiven? The answer isn't as tabloid sweet as some might hope. Paul wounded him in the room. Time and friendship did a lot of repair. John's disappearance into an all-consuming love left the band unbalanced. His murder ended any chance to fully untangle it. The deepest betrayal was the outsider he'd trusted to protect the family, who instead turned the family into a courtroom. If there is a name Ringo cannot forgive, it's likely the one that guaranteed the 4 would never stand together again. What remains is legacy, sharper than the early headlines. Ringo wasn't the least talented Beatle. He was the heartbeat, the foundation that let three singular voices stretch into something bigger than any one of them. The longer time runs, the clearer that truth feels. He wasn't the luckiest drummer alive. He was the right drummer in the right band at the right moment, with a feel no one else could have given them. If you've made it this far, you probably have a take. Who do you think Ringo resented most, and did time heal enough of it? Drop your thoughts below. Hit like if this gave you a new angle on the story, and subscribe for more deep dives into the moments that reshaped music history.